It's 5 p.m. across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you all the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from London is my colleague, Stuart Smith. Good to have you, Stuart, with us.
Good afternoon, Tanvi. It's 12:30 p.m. here in the UK and 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, the UK Prime Minister addresses the opportunities and threats of artificial intelligence. Armenia hunts for peace with Azerbaijan, and signs of progress between striking US auto workers and their bosses. But first, the headlines.
Israeli troops on standby for ground invasion of Gaza. Confirmed number of hostages rises to 224, says Israeli military. US-backed resolution on Israel-Hamas war fails to pass in the UN Security Council. The 193-member UN General Assembly to now vote on a non-binding resolution drafted by the Arab states.
Had a responsibility to respond to the slaughter of their people. And we will ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists. That's a guarantee.
Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan says they hope for peace with Azerbaijan soon. And Britain to set up the world's first artificial intelligence safety institute, says Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, ahead of the Global AI Summit in London next week. The Israeli military on Thursday operated inside northern Gaza, attacking multiple Hamas targets. In a statement posted online, the Israeli military said that the incursion was carried out in preparation for the next stages of combat, a possible reference to the large-scale invasion that Israel has threatened to carry out in order to destroy Hamas. The Israeli military also said that the number of people held hostages in Gaza had reached 224 and could rise even further.
Up until now, we have delivered a message to the families 309 fallen IDF soldiers and 224 hostages. This number, unfortunately, is updating and changing according to the intel we have in our disposal. Each such intel sends us to the family, and we continue gathering. It is also done together with an operational effort, including the operational effort that we have seen yesterday in northern Gaza. We continue to hold such raids that are meant to gather intel in the field, which we can cross-check and understand who is hostage, who is missing, and to update the families.
Now, DD India's Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv. Sarah, Israeli army conducted a nighttime incursion into Gaza. What more can you tell us on the ground offensive?
Hello there, Tanvi. Well, look, the IDF is calling it a relatively large incursion. We do know that it happened overnight. Soldiers are now back on the Israeli side of the Gaza border. This largest incursion that we've seen so far involved soldiers, it involved bulldozers, and it involved tanks for the first time. We do know that military personnel who went into the strip, their aim was to collect intelligence and to prepare the ground, this is according to the IDF, ahead of what is expected to be a ground operation, a large-scale ground operation in the coming days or in the coming weeks. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he addressed the nation last night. He said that the ground operation will happen, levelling a threat at Hamas operatives, calling them dead men walking. Now, look, one of the key members of Israel's war cabinet, he's also the opposition leader here in Israel, Benny Gantz, he has just come out to say that it may take years to restore security to these southern border communities, with that being a real indication that the Israeli government, the Israeli war cabinet, could see this conflict dragging on for a long, long time. He's also told residents in the south to prepare to not be able to go home for at least 12 months with this evacuation order that has been issued to residents in the south and also on the north, with the Lebanon border there extended until the 31st of December.
Yes. Sarah, UN agencies fear aid closures in Gaza within 24 hours. What's the latest on the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza?
Well, look, Tanvi, it's certainly a shocking situation. We know that tens of thousands of people have been wounded, more than 7,000 others killed. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. We can tell you that 12 aid trucks have just gone through the Rafah crossing. They're carrying things like water, food and vital medical aid, although the UN agency UNRWA, which helps Palestinian refugees in the Gaza Strip and other parts of the Palestinian territories, it says that it may have to cease operations in the coming hours simply due to the fact that it does not have fuel to do things like drive people around or drive aid deliveries around. While hospital workers say that these facilities, half of them are only operating right now, are on the brink of collapse, saying they're having to turn people away who have been injured. Now, Israel remains defiant, saying it will not let fuel into the Gaza Strip, fearing it will fall into the hands of Hamas, telling these aid agencies working down in the coastal enclave, go and ask Hamas for fuel. So, look, it certainly is a desperate situation for the tens of thousands of people and also who've been injured and the hundreds of thousands of people who've been displaced, Tanvi.
Thank you, Sarah, for that update. Sarah Coates joining us from Tel Aviv. Now, humanitarian aid from the United Arab Emirates has been sent to Palestinians in Gaza. The aircraft carried over 10 tons of vital supplies, including medical items and kits. It was the 6th flight sent by the International Humanitarian City and its partners to the people of Gaza. So calls for a humanitarian ceasefire have only grown louder over the last 2 weeks. My colleague Stuart Smith is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around Europe and the world. Stuart, over to you.
As the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian group Hamas entered its 20th day on Thursday, more than 7,900 people have already been killed in the conflict that began on October 7th.
These pictures taken on Miles, a father of twins, down the memory lane.
These are some of them. The children.
He describes kibbutz as a place full of life and happiness. But things changed after October 7.
This is the house of my family. I've been here like a month ago with my twins. We came to celebrate this family reunion. We were sitting here doing some games and we were all celebrating. It was Saturday morning.
These blindfolded teddy bears on the streets of Tel Aviv symbolically represent missing children kidnapped by Hamas. It has been 3 weeks since these Israeli families have been anxiously waiting for their loved ones. Hamas has taken more than 200 people hostage after the attack. Pain and grief resemble also on the other side of the border. Buildings have fallen like house of cards, leaving thousands homeless. It's screaming and moaning everywhere in Gaza. There's no electricity, lack of drinking water. Hospitals are running out of fuel. This school in Gaza has turned into a shelter home for Palestinian refugees. But these children are hoping for a better tomorrow. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
The United Nations Security Council has rejected 2 resolutions on the escalation of violence in Israel and Gaza. The United States and Russia each put forward a draft calling for the Council to address shortages of food, water and other necessities in Gaza. But Russia's resolution demanded a humanitarian ceasefire, something the US has not supported. DD India's Sally Patterson has more.
Negotiations were going on right up to the last minute, with the scheduled Security Council meeting pushed back to allow talks to continue. Russia had already said it would not support the US draft resolution, given the absence of language calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. The US argues any ceasefire will give Hamas the ability to rest and get ready to continue launching attacks against Israel. Instead, it called for humanitarian pauses to allow aid to get into Gaza. Now, Russia then put forward its own alternative text for representatives to vote on. Speaking before the vote, the US said their resolution was strong and balanced, and they had listened to all members. They said Russia had put forward their resolution in bad faith. But Russia said its draft wasn't political and accused the US of playing politics. Meanwhile, China accused the US of ignoring member states and having double standards, calling the draft out of balance. Both China and Russia vetoed the resolution. Russia's draft also didn't get enough votes to pass. This was the second time in 10 days the Council considered drafts on the crisis in the Middle East. It so far failed to adopt any resolutions on the recent escalations in Israel and Gaza. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
European Union heads of state are gathering in Brussels for a two-day meeting of the European Council. The leaders have a packed agenda which includes the situation in the Middle East, Russia's invasion of Ukraine and agreeing the next EU budget. DD India's Alex Cadier reports from Brussels.
Top of the agenda for the European Union's 27 heads of state and government will be to discuss the call for a humanitarian pause in Israel's bombardment of Gaza. The question is one of language. Some countries want to call for a pause, some for multiple pauses, others prefer calling for a humanitarian window. They almost certainly won't call it a ceasefire. Countries like Germany and the Czech Republic have been reluctant to use that term for fear of not seeming supportive enough of Israel, while others like Ireland and Spain have pushed for this to become the EU's position as soon as possible. Whatever the exact language, leaders will almost certainly call for some form of humanitarian corridor and pause. But even if they do, whether or not Israel will listen is still up for debate. Beyond violence in the Middle East, the war on Europe's doorstep will also be a key topic. President Zelensky will address the leaders via video link, and EU officials insist that they have seen no fatigue from member states and that the bloc's support for Ukraine is still strong. EU leaders will also discuss the bloc's most contentious issue, migration. Many member states have called for tighter security measures to be rolled out across the bloc's asylum system after terrorist attacks in France and Belgium. Finally, the EU economy will be discussed, with member states poring over plans for the bloc's long-term budget and joined by European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde. You can also expect some fairly robust debate on this too. It's certainly a packed agenda for leaders dealing with global turmoil and much-needed reforms at home. Alex Cadier in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has said that Armenia hopes to reach a peace deal soon with Azerbaijan. This comes days after the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan held talks in Iran. This was the first high-level engagement between the two sides since the exodus of Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh after Baku took control of the enclave.
We hope that on the basis of these principles, in the coming months, we shall sign with Azerbaijan an agreement on peace and establishment of relations. I hope that in the near future, we will have developments also for opening of Armenia-Turkey border for citizens of third countries and for holders of diplomatic passports. This too will bring a positive stimulus for the whole region.
Meanwhile, Russia has asked Yerevan for clarification over Pashinyan's comment that he saw no advantage in retaining Russian military bases in Armenia. Relations between the two former Soviet nations have soured over the Karabakh conflict. Armenia earlier accused Russian peacekeepers of failing to protect the Armenian population of Karabakh. An emergency alert has been sounded in the U.S. state of Maine after at least 16 people were killed and dozens injured in mass shootings. The suspect is at large.
Another mass shooting rocked the United States on Wednesday. This time the target was the northeastern U.S. state of Maine, where shooting incidents were reported at multiple locations. At least 22 people were killed and over 50 were wounded.
That approximately 6:56 this evening, a couple of shooting incidents occurred here with multiple casualties in the city of Lewiston. And police are currently searching for a Robert R. Card.
The injured were taken to nearby hospitals. Police are still on the hunt for the shooter and found a vehicle which they believed was used in the crime at Maine. Lewiston, Maine Police Department released pictures of the suspect, a bearded man in a long-sleeved shirt and jeans, holding a rifle in the firing position. The department also released a picture of a white SUV with a dark front bumper and asked the public to call in any tips. Leaders and politicians in the U.S. have repeatedly held debates on reforming gun laws in the country, as mass shootings have become a major problem. Some are pressing for stricter laws against gun possession, while others dub it as the right to carry arms for self-defense.
Well, that's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Stuart. Stuart Smith joining us all the way from London. Still to come on DD India Global. Russia conducts a massive nuclear strike drill hours after their parliament revoked the country's ratification of a global ban on nuclear testing.
Distinguished women scientists who played a stellar role in successful launch of mission Chandrayaan-3.
Hard work, resilience, and being perfect. The brighter young minds we have, the future is going to be better.
We should capitalize this moment and we should take the children forward. I think they are the future of our country.
There is much more needs to be explored and understood.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to India now. The Foreign Ministry of India has reacted to the decision of Qatar's court giving death penalty to 8 former Indian Navy personnel. The Ministry of External Affairs said, and I quote here, "We are deeply shocked by the verdict of death penalty and are awaiting the detailed judgment. We are in touch with the family members and the legal team, and we are exploring all legal options. We attach high importance to this case and have been following it closely. We will continue to extend all consular and legal assistance. We will also take up the verdict with the Qatari authorities." And DD India's Akshay Dongre is live from New Delhi on this story. Akshay, what is this case all about involving these Indian Navy personnel, and what legal options are now available to them in this case?
Well, Tanvi, this entire case came to limelight last year in the month of August 2022, when the Qatari intelligence services arrested 8 former Navy personnel who were employed with a consultancy firm in Qatar that was in charge of training the armed forces of Qatar. All of these 8 men were working in Dahra consultancy firm, and they were picked up by the intelligence agencies of Qatar on 30th of August. Now the charges that they were framed with were espionage, not for India but for Israel, and that these were the charges for which now they have been granted death penalty by a first instance court of Qatar. Government of India has been in touch with the Qatari authorities. However, even the Ministry of External Affairs statement has said and acknowledged the confidential matter of this entire case, and that is why they have not commented in a lot of details as far as the ongoing conversations are concerned, the ongoing talks are concerned as far as this verdict is there. However, it is deeply shocking, not just for the family members of these 8 former Navy personnel who are in fact decorated officers who have served in the Indian Navy, but for the entire country. And the government of India has already claimed that all kind of legal and consular access and help will be provided to these men, their families, and the government of India is in constant touch with the Qatari authorities as far as the verdict is concerned, and it will be contested in future.
Okay. Thank you, Akshay Dongre, for that update. Now, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has said that members of the international community cannot bury their heads in the sand when it comes to the risks posed by artificial intelligence, but adds that the benefits this technology could bring are potentially significant, just as much as the invention of electricity. He's given a major speech on the issue before the United Kingdom hosts the first ever Global AI Summit in London next week. DD India's William Denslow reports from London.
In his address, Rishi Sunak unveiled the first Artificial Intelligence Safety Institute. The UK Prime Minister says it will help advance the world's knowledge of AI safety. The institute will be tasked with testing new forms of AI so that it can be understood and the risks can be assessed. Sunak has equated artificial intelligence to electricity and the internet when it comes to the global benefits this technology can bring. The UK is investing a further roughly $120 million to help accelerate the use of AI in the field of healthcare.
Get this wrong, and AI could make it easier to build chemical or biological weapons. Terrorist groups could use AI to spread fear and destruction on an even greater scale. Criminals could exploit AI for cyber attacks, disinformation, fraud, or even child sexual abuse. And in the most unlikely but extreme cases, there is even the risk that humanity could lose control of AI completely, through the kind of AI sometimes referred to as superintelligence.
Sunak says that advances in AI could one day help deliver nuclear fusion to provide cheap, clean and abundant energy, and also help farmers to help solve world hunger. While the PM says that people don't need to lose sleep over the risks of AI, he adds that they also can't be ignored. A major perceived threat is posed by non-state actors and the dangers of AI being used to conduct cyber attacks or create bioweapons. There are also fears that AI systems could, conceivably, begin operating autonomously.
I can announce that we will establish the world's first AI Safety Institute right here in the UK. It will advance the world's knowledge of AI safety, and it will carefully examine, evaluate, and test new types of AI so that we understand what each new model is capable of, exploring all the risks, from social harms like bias and misinformation, through to the most extreme risks of all.
The UK is positioning itself as a leader in AI safety and is hosting a summit next week to bring together elected officials and industry experts from around the world to explore the benefits and dangers of this technology. It's not yet clear how many world leaders will attend or how many countries will send delegations. William Denslow in London, reporting for DD India.
And talking of future technologies, the world's biggest automakers are demonstrating their vision for the future of transportation at the Japan Mobility Show. Cancelled due to the pandemic in 2021, it is the first time that the car show has been held in 4 years as Japanese companies try to keep up with the advanced EV, that's electric vehicle technology, of their competitors. DD India's Chris Gilbert reports from Tokyo.
This is a crucial moment, not just for Japanese manufacturers, but for makers from Europe and China who are exhibiting here as well at the first Tokyo Mobility Show in 4 years, and the first one ever under that name, as the whole industry really looks to pitch itself and pivot as a forward-focused, forward-thinking industry and an environmentally friendly one as well. But while companies like Toyota may be leading the world in terms of sales, they're lagging the world when it comes to actually adopting EV batteries and new energy systems for their private transportation vehicles. And while companies that are exhibiting here like BMW and Mercedes are actually demonstrating products that are currently in production, Japanese companies are pitching their products, which are still concepts, visions for the future. Toyota is unveiling updates to its very famous Century and Crown models, other companies like Subaru, Mitsubishi, Nissan are unveiling new environmentally friendly batteries and products and parts for new pickup trucks, SUVs, sports cars, and as you can see, even the odd flying car. Now, this is, as I say, a very important time for these businesses in particular, because sales for Mitsubishi have not been so good, especially offshore in the China market, where they are actually looking reportedly setting up shop altogether. So this is their moment to really pitch and sell their vision for what the automotive industry, for what the private transportation industry of the future may look like. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo, reporting for DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. South Korea and the United States have been conducting a large-scale maritime exercise in the Yellow Sea to strengthen their allies' defense posture and interoperability. Russia's military has conducted a massive retaliatory nuclear strike drill hours after the upper house of parliament voted to revoke the country's ratification of a global ban on nuclear testing. This exercise was overseen by President Vladimir Putin. Ukrainian businesses are preparing for the prospect of another winter of widespread power outages amid fears of renewed Russian aggression. Many businesses struggle to adapt to the effects of the attacks, suffering losses and cutting staff. SeaWorld San Diego is celebrating the birth of a female emperor penguin chick for the first time since 2010. The United States is finalizing protections for Antarctica's emperor penguin under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. So that's all in this edition of DD India Global, but do join us again tomorrow for DD India Global at 5 p.m. Also, you can connect with us for another edition of this show live from Washington at 7:30 p.m. We'll be back with news as it breaks here on DD India from my entire team in New Delhi. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.